before doing anything, we're gonna take a 13mm and remove the ground. We're gonna replace this intake manifold, and we're gonna remove the intake manifold spacer. First thing we're gonna do for this whole project, we're gonna jack it up, put some jack stands under the front end. We're gonna remove that undercover, and then we'll get to all the rest of the steps. We're gonna start disconnecting all these sensors and these vacuum lines. So the first vacuum line we're gonna do has this green pushy tab thing. Start by pushing the tab here and pulling this connector off. Next connector we need to worry about is right behind the pulley, and you just push down that little tab and pull it off. Once they're both unplugged, pull them out of the way. Go ahead and pull them from underneath this vacuum line and just put them out of the way. Now for that vacuum line, we're going to pull the two green tabs. There's one that you can see right there and one on the other side. You pull them apart a little bit and this will slide away, unlocking it. Then you have to squeeze the adapter and pull it off. So once you pull these two little tabs here and get this pulled out, and then you squeeze the top here where my thumb's at, it spreads apart the green things, and you can wiggle this off of the stud. Once you have it unclipped from the manifold, then pull this off of these clips here, here, and here. Now that you have the vacuum line out of the way, you just drape it over here, and you could put it hooked on this so it doesn't get in your way again. Now on the throttle body clamp, you're going to need a 7mm to loosen that clamp, and that'll remove the lower intercooler pipe right here from the throttle body. Now we're going to remove the bolts from the manifold. In my case, because I already have the spacer, mine are 6mm hex, so I'm going to remove those. I don't remember if stock was the same, because these are longer. But anyways, I'm probably going to have to use different hardware to put it back on, so we'll see in a minute. We have all the hardware out. Now we should be able to go ahead and wiggle this loose. Once we wiggle this loose, we need to pay attention to the back side, because there's a hose for your PCV, and I believe there's another sensor plug somewhere in the back. Now that you got the intake manifold pushed away, you can get to this one. You're going to just squeeze this. Yeah, squeeze it on the rib part on both sides, and then it should wiggle off. On the bottom of the throttle body, you have a connector. There's a little red tab that comes out. See how I pulled it out? Now there'll be a little push tab. You just push it in, and then, like all the other connectors, and then pull it out. Now take your 8mm and take off the throttle body. Now go ahead and clean all the nastiness that's accumulated over the miles where the plate closes against. Just use a rag and a little brake clean if you need to. Don't try to scrub it or scrape it. Take a T30 Torx bit and remove the sensor. For those of you who don't understand why I had that spacer on here, let me go ahead and show you now. So on the stock manifold, it's just a rectangle. On the head, it's not a rectangle. It's got the two ports, and this is not rounded off at all. It's just a flat edge. So when the air comes through the manifold, it has to hit this wall and then go in either the left or the right side. So what the spacer was doing was adding this nice bevel like every other normal head in existence has. You can see it better at this angle here. Instead of being a flat wall where it goes bam and causes a bunch of turbulence, it's a nice bullet shave. So I know you can't see it because it's inside the manifold now, but the new intake manifold has that piece built into the intake. So now I don't need the spacer because it already has it there. And so that's going to lower the turbulence going from the intake into the motor. Here we go with the replacement gaskets. I highly recommend just spending, I think it was like $7.80 for all the gaskets I needed. This one's for the throttle body. There's the part number. And then these are for the intake to the head. And there's the part number for that. So what I did here, I put some right stuff, a little bit, in the groove, and then I put the gasket in. So if I ever have to change it again, it's going to be kind of a pain, but this guarantees no leaks. What I'm going to do now is to make sure I have 0 leaks ever from the throttle body. I'm only going to put a little bit, a small tiny skim of right stuff on the outside of the O-ring. None on this inside lip, none at all. Just on the outside lip, I'm going to put a small amount. If you get a little over application, like around the sides, or you accidentally get some in here, your best bet is a cloth with some brake cleaner, and it comes right off. When you go to tighten the bolts down, you want to do it in a star pattern because the gasket has the throttle body lifted. So you want to go start in one, just get it to touch, then come across, then over, then across, and keep doing that. Like you're doing that, I don't know the name of it, but that little church sign thing. Any excess RTV that pops out, just go ahead, take a rag and some brake cleaner and clean it off. So go ahead and do that same technique on these gaskets. So luckily it does fit, so I put a tiny bit of right stuff on the threads. I'm going to tighten this down. Now with all this installed, it looks like we're ready to put it back in the car. We have our blow-off valve, our throttle body, and all our gaskets in. Make sure everything's nice and clean. And if you're going to use the right stuff, go ahead, put it on right before you put it. Make sure, like I said, on the throttle body, there's none on this inner part. It's only on the outer part. First thing you want to plug in is the PCV hose, and then the throttle body connector. Now we can rotate the intake and get it put back in. I forgot one sensor, guys. That map sensor needs to go right there. So I'm going to undo this screw and grab the sensor. Once again, to make sure I have no boost leaks, put some right stuff on the bottom side of the O-ring, not on the inside. You can see a trend here. I don't want any RTV to be able to flop into the intake or into the runners. Now that we have that tightened down, now we can attach the manifold to the head. I went to Ace Hardware, picked up this metric bolt. It's an 8.8 grade, and it is 2 inches. But when you buy it, they're going to sell it in millimeters, so just convert that with Google, and should be like 25 millimeters or so. And then I use that on here. The smaller head allowed me to get a wrench in, no problem. The problem is this corner, holy crap. So you can't go straight into this corner to tighten it. So you have to sort of tighten it with your fingers as much as you can, and then just whatever tools you got. But for me, It seems like a ratcheting wrench is the only way I can do it. So with a ratcheting wrench going through the belt, I only get like 2 or 3 clicks per, and yeah, so that was pretty hard. The other ones are all easy with the same wrench. Connect the vacuum line and connect the 2 connectors and push the wiring harness in between in here instead of coming across the top. This gives you a nice little bit of slack on the bottom, and that way it's not too tight. Here's what it looks like all put together from the top. Now I have to put the bottom intercooler pipe back on because I took it off to give it a nice cleaning, and then run the blow-off valve to that nipple on the side. If you have an external blow-off valve, you're going to want to make sure you put the hose on and zip tie it. You don't just want to put just a plain vacuum line on. You want to make sure it's zip tied nice and tight. Make sure all your clamps are tight. These 2 on top and the one on the bottom. It says optional here. I'm going to change mine. But increase the intake manifold volume in your cobb accessport software in your tune to 6.435 liters. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. One thing I did notice when I was messing around with this was my belts are starting to get horrible. They're original belts and I'm at like 95,000 miles. So that'll be one of the videos coming up soon. Now reinstall the undercarriage cover. At this point you can reinstall the negative battery wire. Now lower the car and you should be done. Thanks for everybody that came to check out this video. I hope it helps. This is definitely a 3.5 to 4 out of 5 stars, and we'll see how it does. I'll try to do an update video in the future. Till then, wrench on.